Lucky Boys Podcast.
I am hoping that we will see improvement, and especially with the current crisis of homelessness.
You think Mayor Adams can do it, as much as you seem to despise him?
I want him to do it. I don't despise him because of who he is. I'm not too crazy about him for his lack of action. I myself, as a practical engineer, I do things. I'm not a social scientist because I don't, and this is like how I feel about social scientists. They always sit back and they overthink and they think and they're afraid of peer review because they have a lot of good ideas, but they don't want to implement them because they're afraid that their peers would ridicule them because they don't like failure. As an engineer, I embrace failure because in order for me to fail, I have to do something.
Right. And you're also learning what works and what doesn't.
And if you don't do, of course you will not fail. I want Adams not to fail. I don't despise him for who he is. I don't care. You're voted. See, I did say hi. You were voted in as the mayor of one of the most largest cities in the world. You have a responsibility to do things, not to ask another mayor from another city for advice, which is worse than what's happening in New York City when it comes to illegal guns.
So do you think within 2 years that things in New York City will return to what it was prior?
I would have to, monitor his this year. What is that, 4 years to a term?
Mayor is limited to 2 consecutive 4-year terms in office in New York City, but may run again after a 4-year break.
Right. Yes. The 100 days right now, because of everything, you have to remember, I measured Adam because of his so-called qualifications. I measured his, I gave him the grade because of his prior experience as
Borough president,
an NYPD
yeah,
police officer for 20 some odd years. So he should have working knowledge right down to the individual precinct. He was 8 years as borough president with working knowledge of his own borough of Brooklyn. So with all that experience, you come in and you understand how de Blasio works. And for the first 100 days, even like with Trump, you sign acts and you do all of that. So far, all he's been doing is just a lot of talk. Already, I do not see the decrease in anti-Asian crimes. I do not see the shooting has, as a matter of fact, ComStat has already proven the numbers have gotten higher. Because you have to remember, if you're going to be a social scientist and doing things like this, your actions is based on your report card from ComStat. That's your crime rate stat scene. And regardless of the homicide, I think ComStat sometimes their statistics also cue the way the parameter, because it doesn't tell you about crimes and violent crimes and assault, killings because of just like the Asian guy that got stabbed and killed over gambling, but it was still a violent crime. So we're talking about violent crime that leads to death, sometimes robbery that led to death, and how they how they would label the parameters to give you those numbers. The news itself right now is telling you shooting crimes are up, robberies are up.
So they can essentially run as many times as they want.
After a 4
years.
Because Bloomberg
So they can run 2
to,
consecutive terms.
And then another 2.
It's like, didn't Bloomberg try to run for, I think Bloomberg tried to run for 3.
I think he wanted to
Limited the term.
to make a change in the law so that he can run for a 3rd term.
Because a lot of times, if you have a good
through.
legacy, he wants to see his stuff, in fruition. I can understand Bloomberg's mentality. But, like I said, I will give Adams another year, because I personally I don't know, but I'm not asked. You can't just hate some. Get it done. Just because I don't like you, it does not mean you can't get the job done. Like as I mentioned that with Giuliani, just get the job done.
He will make some sort of impact.
Well, there's one thing
I can't say if it's which way he's going to lean towards.
Lucky Boys Podcast.